Hi, this is Scott, the Tall Woodworker. Welcome to my shop. Today I'm making a ring. So I had this idea of creating a combination of a wood and resin ring out of this piece of burl wood, which has this really cool textured pattern that I figured from the side can actually look maybe like a beach pattern. And so I wanted to cast this in some resin with colored white and blue and create hopefully an ocean scene. So I have a blank that I've already mounted to the lathe and I've been starting to turn this. The reason I'm starting the video now instead of earlier is because I didn't know how this was going to turn out. This is actually my second attempt. This was my first attempt and I had so many problems with this. I was using a much smaller spindle to hold this onto, so this thing kept falling. First off, it kept falling out of the chuck. Then when I cut the hole for the ring core to go in, there wasn't enough surface area for the glue, so this thing kept falling off. This basically turned into a disaster. In the end, once I finally got it shaped, I realized there is going to be so little resin in here, it may as well just be a wooden ring. So we're tossing that one aside, and I'm starting with a new blank here. So cast this one a bit differently, and I made sure that on this side of the ring, the resin was almost 100%. There's a few pieces of wood that sticks out on this side. So all I'm doing now is turning this side down to hopefully turn more of the wood away. What I'm hoping for is to see a bit of a pattern that you can kind of already see forming where the wood, like I said, is kind of like the land and the resin is like the sea. So right now I've got to take down about 30% of what's remaining on here of the width. I need to get this down to 6 millimeters in order to fit inside the ring, and you'll see that in a bit. I also have to drill a hole in here similar to what you saw in the other piece for the ring core to go on. So I'll probably do the hole first, get this thing back on the lathe, reduce the width down to what I need it to be for the ring, then we'll glue it up and turn it down. So hopefully, if you're watching this, this actually means that it was a success. But after one failure, I'm still kind of a little skeptical of whether or not this is going to work out perfectly. But like I said, we'll see how this all works out. So let's get going. I brought the blank over to my drill press to drill out a center hole with a Forstner bit. I'm actually going really slow here. This is just sped up 4 times. The Forstner bit is slightly smaller than the ring core, so I don't have to be dead on center. And then once I'm done with this, I'm going to take it over to the lathe and finish turning the center to match the core. You'll see me stop several times and do a test fit with the ring core just to make sure that I don't go too far. I'm shaving off just a tiny little bit each pass, doing a test fit, and then keep on going. It's a lot easier to take out more material, but it's pretty difficult to put more material back in. And that fits in perfectly. Now that I know that the inside is the perfect diameter, it's time for me to cut the outside to match the proper width. What I'm shooting for is close to 6 millimeters, but I actually still want to keep it slightly over that. What I'm doing here is starting to pare into it. Just makes the cuts a little bit easier to do it this way, and then I'll fine tune it a little bit. Just like with the inside of the ring, I stop the lathe several times and check with a pair of calipers just to try to get to that perfect fit. What I'm doing here is making sure that the face is completely flat. Now that I got an approximate width, it's time for me to cut the ring blank off of the mandrel spindle. So now, using a sheet of sandpaper glued to a flat piece of plywood, I'm going to keep flattening down the ring and try to get down to that 6mm thickness that I'm looking for. Once I get it as close as I can, it's time to glue in the ring core into the ring. Okay, so I did sand this down just a little bit too thin. It's slightly under 6mm right now. I'm hoping that won't be too much of a problem. So it's time to epoxy the blank into the core, and right now everything's lining up very beautifully here. So we're going to use a fast setting 5-minute epoxy to get that in here. This is a press-on core, which means we are going to have to apply pressure. I'm just going to use the old mandrel that, well, this is the one that I tried spinning on the old one, so hopefully it still has some use, and a hammer to do that. And since there might be just a slight gap, I'm going to see if I can put a little bit of the dye powder into the epoxy so that if there is a gap, it will hopefully not be as noticeable. That's the goal, at least. This stuff does dry pretty clear, so I'm hoping that the addition of the dye will help out. Tinting the epoxy to match the epoxy in the ring blank actually turned out to be a really good idea. However, if I could go back and fix one mistake, I would have applied more epoxy to the inside. You can see some air bubbles in the final product, and I'll be showing that to you a little bit later. However, still overall happy with the way this turned out. Once I get the two pieces together, it's time to whack it with a hammer. Once the epoxy cures, I can use a pen mandrel and a pair of ring bushings to mount the ring back to the lathe and start turning it down. When turning Alumilite, you get a lot of these crazy resin shavings that fly off the ring. They look cool at first, but man, do they get annoying as you're trying to turn. They just get in the way, they make a huge mess. But overall, the end result turned out really good, so I can deal with a little bit of cleanup every now and then. I've sped this part up to 8 times normal speed, but you'll see how quickly the ring actually does come down to its final shape. Well, that is when you don't have the giant mess of resin shavings flying around. Because the resin and wood are an inlay inside the ring, the main idea is to turn this down all the way until I just touch the metal on the two sides of the ring. That way, when it's all finished, it will feel completely flat. Now that we got the ring flattened, it's time to start doing a sanding process. This is very similar to sanding a pen down to its final smoothness. However, you gotta be a little bit more careful. You don't want to scratch up the metal too much, and if you do, it's not that big of a deal. As you go up in the grits, it gets shiny again anyway. Now that the sanding is done and the ring is smooth, it's time to add a protective coat. I'm using a thin CA glue in order to give it a uniform feel across the entire ring. I apply about 5 to 6 coats of thin CA glue to the ring and buff it down each time and spray it with activator. Once the CA glue is all dried, I hit the ring with the micro mesh sanding pads. There's about 9 pads in the collection, and I go up one at a time, taking my time. I'm making sure to also hit the metal of the ring to remove any scratches that are on that as well. Now I'm using a plastic polish compound to give it a super shine. Just need a couple coats of this, buff it off, and the result is amazing in the end. And here's the finished product. Overall, I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. However, there are a few things I would change. I wish I had used a little bit more epoxy to attach the blank to the core. It did leave a few air bubbles that you can see right about now. However, the way that I wear it, I usually make those bubbles face downward. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up icon below the video. Also, if you enjoy my videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click the bell notification so that you know when I post new videos. I don't release anything on any type of schedule, so the easiest way to know when I post something new is to hit the bell icon. Thanks for watching!